The following is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network.
Defense Soap revolutionized athletic hygiene in 2005 with the introduction of a bar soap containing natural ingredients proven to be effective against skin infections common to wrestlers. Today, Defense Soap leads the world in sports hygiene innovation with a complete line of bar soaps, shower gels, and body wipes that contain high-grade tea tree, eucalyptus, and peppermint oils. Defense Soap. Defend what you have built at DefenseSoap.com. Hello, wrestling fans. It's time for the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. The World Wrestling Resource was made that you as a wrestler, parent, coach, or fan can have access to all the resources of the very best in the world of wrestling. I'm three-time wrestling writer and broadcaster of the year, Jason Bryant, and I want you to join me, along with John McGovern and world champions Terry Brands and Dennis Hall, as we talk training tips, topical discussion, mental preparation, and more on the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. World Wrestling Resource is sponsored by Defense Soap. Find World Wrestling Resource on Facebook at facebook.com/World Wrestling Resource and follow us on Twitter at WWRESO. And, of course, on the web at worldwrestlingresource.com. Now on to the show as we join John McGovern, Terry Brands, and Dennis Hall. And welcome back, wrestling fans. It's another episode of the World Wrestling Resource Podcast. I'm Jason Bryant. This show brings you all sorts of things in and around the world of wrestling involving resources. And today we'll be talking about one of those resources, that is Wrestling Mindset Training with Gene Zannetti, one of the founders of Wrestling Mindset. Last time these guys were on the show, episode 37. So, Gene, we're a little bit overdue on the mindset training here on the World Wrestling Resource.
That's it. That's okay. Better late than never.
And you know, you can go back and hear about some of the foundations of Wrestling Mindset on episode 37. We were talking about red flags in that episode. That's also been a prevailing theme that you guys use on social media a lot, kind of recycling this stuff because, with the short attention span of Twitter, sometimes 7 minutes is all you get. How important is it to kind of repeat messages like mindset red flags and things that you guys can just clear through and plow through in terms of the world of wrestling?
Tremendously important. It's something that we've been very blessed to see the perspective of thousands, even tens of thousands of wrestlers over the past 10 years. And the interesting thing is that they don't all have unique problems or unique issues, right? Whether it's youth wrestlers, middle school, high school, college, the Olympic team, even UFC fighters, it's the same thing. They're struggling with the same kind of mindset red flags, like giving good opponents too much respect, being more of a practice room wrestler, not pulling the trigger, no killer instinct out there. We see it every year at the state tournaments, at the national tournaments. Guys come in, their eyes are as wide as saucers. They're like a deer in the headlights because they just weren't mentally prepared, and we see it in dual meets. We see it in tournaments. It just happens all the time. People just wrestling the ranking, wrestling the kid's record, wrestling the past, and not actually going against the opponent and focusing on the wrong things. So, great thing.
As we dial things back, we'll do a little bit of a recap on how things got started for those who are unfamiliar with how you and your brother started up Wrestling Mindset, which was Z Wrestling Mindset at one point, now just WrestlingMindset.com. Just give us the, the Cliff Notes version of how we began this whole effort.
Yeah, so pretty much in high school, we did a lot of physical training, but we always know that wrestling's like 90% mental, 95% mental, yet we were probably doing 95% physical training. So right there, there's kind of an imbalance. And a lot of times we're losing matches because, again, we're getting too nervous. We're too cautious, too conservative, too hesitant out there. In college, that was the first time I heard anything about sports psychology. The only problem was when the sports psychologist would come in and work with the team, it was much more like theoretical, philosophical. It was more, let's all lay down on the ground, cut the lights, and we do a visualization segment. And it's like, that's great. I'm all about visualization, but you're kind of losing kids right away. I mean, the reason why we wrestle is because we're hands-on, practical. We need to touch it, taste it, smell it, feel it, right? So we wanted to make this. I saw the value of psychology in sports, but it just wasn't being delivered to wrestlers the right way. I mean, most kids, you do that visualization, the kids would close their eyes, fall asleep, or they're laughing. They weren't really taking it as serious. And then the other mistake I would see a lot of times, just very general language for all sports, and it was up to the wrestler to kind of apply that general knowledge base, that general information to the sport of wrestling. So guys had a problem adapting it. And a lot of times sports psychologists would come and they would talk about goal setting, which is great. But I remember back in college at the University of Pennsylvania, we were a top 20 team in the nation. The whole team was basically ranked. We had 7 out of 10 national qualifiers and a 2-time NCAA champ and an All-American. I mean, guys did not need to be focusing on goal setting. There was much more pressing issues. So I think there was big holes in sports psychology. I wanted to take that great field and make it wrestling specific, made by wrestlers for wrestlers.
And as the world of wrestling mindset has evolved, now you go to the website again, wrestlingmindset.com. You've got men's mindset, women's mindset, team mindset, youth mindsets. How have they all kind of blossomed, and what have you found probably is maybe one of the biggest differences in wrestling between, say, the men's mindset and the women's mindset, and how do you guys teach that?
You know, there's a lot the same. There's a lot that's different. I mean, I think a lot of times with women's wrestling, you see a lot more. We don't want to let other people down, although that is a prominent issue with men too. It just might be more under the surface. They sweep it under. But women, it's a little bit more, you see a little bit more emotions, a little bit more likely to quit. And, again, just letting those emotions just dictate like how they're doing that day. But it's very common among guys too. So I hesitate to call it a specifically women's problem. It's just a lot of times expressed differently in men and women. But the big thing is, we break it down into teams and to individuals. We have a team program, which is all done over Skype, an individual program, which is all done over the phone. And then we deal with a lot of kids under the age of 10. And for them, there's that kids program that you brought up before. I just wanted to clarify what that was all about. So the men and women, they're getting the same mindset program. The kids, it's going to be tweaked slightly more because, it's a younger age. They need to understand the importance of how this all relates to the big picture, school and their whole life.
And as far as dialing back to the men's and women's thing, do you think that some of the mindset training in terms of, you talked about the atrophy there, the quitting that may occur. And of course, I begin to think that happens with maybe the wrong training from a coaching standpoint. How much do you have to train the coach to also work with this program so they're not telling the athletes the wrong thing, that men or women that are causing them to say, you know what, this sport is not for me. I didn't come in here to get yelled at. I came here to learn a sport and have fun. So, I mean, how much of the mindset training goes both ways, not with just you guys talking to the athletes, but you guys also training the coaches?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you're looking to build a successful team, you're looking to build a dynasty, you need everyone speaking the same language. So I think you nailed it right there. It's the athletes, it's the coaches, it's the parents, it's getting everyone speaking the same language and delivering a uniform message to these kids. That's why when we work with teams, we strongly recommend not only their team comes in, but obviously also the coaches, all their parents, and we invite the recreation team to join those high school teams. Recreation parents, recreation coaches, recreation wrestlers. So now everyone in town is starting to speak the same language. Otherwise, parents can very much undermine the lessons we're giving the kids, even very well-meaning coaches, both well-meaning coaches and parents. It's just they don't necessarily know those common mindset red flags and the basic mental mistakes teams and individuals make.
A lot of this comes
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it did. And my question, too, is how much of your own mindset training goes into the business here? Because kind of turning this on its head a little bit is a lot of mindset training and learning how to be a successful athlete, successful person in life is trial and error. It's not being afraid to fail, but being able to analyze where you failed and improve upon it. With your own business, how much did you and your brothers figure out, like, okay, this works. Now, this doesn't. Let's go back to what works and then build upon it. I mean, how much of your own mindset training did you have to apply to creating the wrestling mindset?
Yeah, I think that's really excites me. And that's I think the real gold of mindset training. My brother and I, we spent a lot of time training physically. We don't really use that anymore, other than trying to look good for the beach, right? And it's winter time.
Well, you guys are from Jersey. Let's clarify that. Okay, there's a little bit of that Jersey Shore DNA in you. You can't deny.
That's right. So
I mean, you guys' hair is always perfect. Your hair is always perfect.
Maybe you're thinking of my brothers, but I'm trying. I just got a haircut.
It runs in the family. I mean, Mike's hair is also perfect too. I mean, you guys. Anyway, continue.
Mike's hair always is perfect. That I will say about him. He presents very well. He's a good guy, Mike. So we what was I saying here about how much the mindset applies from wrestling to life? So there's a lot of training, physical training we did in wrestling. We don't use it anymore. A lot of technical training. We don't use it. nutrition, strength training, yes, a little bit here and there, but mindset, everything we learned from our mindset, everything we learned in wrestling about mindset is now directly related to the business. Just like you said, not being afraid to lose or make mistakes. There's going to be a lot of failures. Not everyone's going to want to do your mindset program. There's always ups and downs. Being in it for the long run. Your career, like I tell our athletes all the time, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you need to be training hard. You need to be training smart. You got to learn from your mistakes, and on and on and on and on. So really wrestling, especially the sport of wrestling, has so many lessons for life as long as you are applying them. The sad thing you see is a lot of people who are very good wrestlers, they don't make that step. They don't take these lessons they learn in wrestling and apply them to life. And then they're just not as successful as they could have been. So that's a major, major point of our program. One of the things we constantly stress, you have to get the big picture from this whole wrestling experience. Yeah, we want to be state champs, national champs, some guys Olympic champs, great. But what are you going to do after that? The next 70, 80 years, God willing, you're alive in this world. How are you applying those lessons to life? So we're constantly having these athletes think about that big picture. That's the value of having a mentor. That's the value of having a wrestling mindset coach.
So who is your wrestling mindset coach? You talk about all these things about goal setting. When you dial it back to the business, where wrestling mindset is going from here, how much of, again, putting your own, practicing what you preach, so to speak. I mean, how do you guys hold each other accountable? How do you guys grow the business based on the same things you are teaching to these teams?
Yeah, different ways. First of all, making sure you have a coach. Anyone who's serious about anything has a coach. We have technical coaches. We have strength coaches. It's important to have a mindset coach. So we apply those lessons ourselves. We have different business mentors, several different people, several different organizations. We work with them directly on them going through our financials, going through our business strategy, the business plan, making sure that that's holding us accountable. My brother Jeff and I, we've always been we've been each other's workout partners, training partners, hold each other accountable then. The same thing we're doing now. And then how we're working on these things also is, as we're going through these different lessons with these athletes, very frequently my brother and I and other mindset coaches were saying, hey, we better apply this lesson to our business, whether it's having a very concrete and specific action plan. A lot of athletes don't have a very clear and specific action plan, what they're doing, when they're going to be doing it, for how many hours, how many minutes, how many repetitions. We're holding each other accountable with that. So it's a constant application, and big time what we're focusing on. Right? A lot of times athletes just don't know what are the right things to focus on. And as we always say, predator mindset, you focus on the three things that you have control of: your effort, your attitude, and aggressiveness. You're not looking around. You're not comparing yourself to the competition. That's very much applicable to your career, right? You can't look at what the next guy's doing. You have enough issues of your own, different things you're trying to work on. So it's focusing on the right things and weeding out the rest of the things. So you have all your energy to solve the problems and the challenges that are in your hands.
Everything's a step-by-step process. So when you're going through and talking to kids, whether they be high school kids or college athletes that you guys work closely with, and there's a breakthrough moment, there is a whole nother set of skills. Basically, it's like a giant flow chart or an if-then command if you're a code guy. So it's like, okay, you finally break through. You've got success. You've hit goal number 1. Then you've hit goal number 2, and then all of a sudden the world opens up and you got a lot more goals. You start winning, say, a state title. All of a sudden your options go from maybe the state school down the street to now you've got 30 Division I schools looking at you. You've got, calls from the Olympic Training Center, for example. Like when you're going through the goal setting process, when the eyes get big and a lot more doors open, how do you guys tweak the mindset training based on, okay, what does the athlete need? Where can we help them make the right decision and guide them to where they feel they ultimately should be?
Yeah, so one of the first things we do with the athletes, we have them fill out a mindset checklist. We break mindset down into different mental muscles. Just like the body has many different physical muscles, the mind is the same way. There's different mental muscles. And we all have some areas we're strong. We all have some areas we're weak. It's just like our body. A lot of coaches will mistakenly believe either you have it or you don't. That's not what we see. What we see is that we're strong in some areas, weak in others. So if you look at the whole program with those 9 major mindset muscles, right, we break it down into 2 parts. There's foundation level mindset, which is more like a goal setting, mental toughness, motivation. And then on the other hand, you have peak performance mindset, which is more like relaxing under pressure, confidence, clarity, aggressiveness. Both are important. of course, but it's a slightly different focus, right? And we tend to see people tend to either struggle more with the foundation level mindset or the peak performance mindset. Most people aren't even aware that either one of those exists. So we break it down into that way. And at different times of year, we're going to be, in different times in the athlete's career, we're going to be having a greater focus, sometimes more in the foundation, sometimes on the peak performance. And sometimes it'll switch. Like when an athlete makes the transition from high school to college, in high school, they may be working more on peak performance because they're one of the top guys in the state. Like you said, they're being recruited heavily. All eyes are on them. Then they get to college. They're a nobody. No one knows who they are. Nobody cares. And they're competing all the time with people who are just as talented as them. So now it's not so much the peak performance. Now it's battling the discouragement. Now it's more building that mental toughness, staying motivated. You know, you were a big fish and now you're a small fish. So it's getting motivated again. Whereas maybe as a senior, they didn't focus as much on being motivated. That make a little sense?
Yeah. And I'm also curious on how you modify certain mindset. I mean, you obviously things are customized for certain kids, but one thing I've seen a lot is when kids are super good at an early age, there is you could either shoot towards the stars or you could end up being, caught by the kid that starts in the 9th grade. And usually that falls around that age 16. When you get the driver's license, you get the girlfriend. How much do you guys think, those are two of the biggest distractions. What is it? Gasoline is the one thing that's prevented the most state championships or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the title is, but you get the girlfriend, you get the car, and your priorities change. Where do you guys try to make sure with your clients and whatnot that type of situation can be at least not necessarily avoided, because who doesn't like having a girlfriend and driving a car around town, especially with you guys at the Jersey Shore. But how do you work on
right.
the teenage psyche right there to make sure they are staying focused?
See, the first thing that makes me think of is one of our exercises, one of our lessons, self-knowledge week 10, and it's understanding the athlete and their environment and their surroundings. Right. A lot of times we'll see a kid who's a real dynamo at a young age. They have a parent who's maybe a little bit overbearing, right? So they need to know how to balance that, or a coach that's possibly very overbearing. So it happens. The coaches, the parents, they have nothing but the best of intentions for the kid. It's just sometimes they're driving them too hard. We got to make sure the kid's the one who's driving the process, especially as they get older. And like you said, as they get to 15, 16, 17 years old, the kid starts learning the word no. And he's able to start making those decisions on his own. So I think self-knowledge week 10 is where we really take a deep look on the kid's relationship with the parents and with the coaches. And we found tremendous success with this with athletes, that sometimes this is the big thing that's holding them back, that they don't have that. The relationship it's not that it's not strong, it's just there's some big holes. So we assess how the coach, how the parent, what they're doing that's helping them mentally, what are they doing that's hurting them mentally? How does the kid process critiques and criticisms, right? What should the coach or the parent be telling the athlete before a match and during the tournament? I bring that up because, again, that's where usually we see the kids getting burnt out. It's usually because there's a strained relationship with a coach or with a parent. We've seen it with thousands of kids. So I think that's the heart of the issue. That's getting deeper than the surface level stuff.
We look at the growth of the need for something like this. I mean, sports psychology you'd alluded to is kind of, you guys weren't really in tune to it until, all of a sudden there is a rationale for this. There is a reason for this. I mean, it's an industry. Just look at professional sports. You got the relief pitcher who blows a save. He's sitting there talking to a sports psychologist for weeks. He might end up ruining their career because they had one bad game and they got into their head. When you look at some of your athletes or coaches that might have that stumble, that roadblock, they were up 10 and got decked in a match to go to the state tournament. And they've only got, it might be their senior year. They might lose it. I mean, how do you apply situational tactics to a failure to make sure that they don't just, fall off the deep end and just basically quit on everything?
Yeah, well, falling off the deep end usually means that there's a bigger issue, and we address that in mental toughness. So we address in mental toughness and in goal setting. So, more than just writing our goals down, you have to know your purpose. Why are you wrestling? Right. And this goes along with our lessons for mental toughness. Who are you? What do you believe? What are you about? The deeper questions that a lot of times we just distract ourselves from by playing Netflix, video games, spending countless hours on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. Why are you doing this? What is it all about? What is wrestling all about? What's life all about? And we speak to that because if you know who you are, if you know what you believe, then you're not going to get too derailed by a loss, right? You're not going to be too derailed by a failure. Yeah, it's going to be upsetting. It's going to hurt. It's going to sting, but it doesn't ruin your life. So you need to know who you are, right? We have 4 principles of wrestling mindset that we have every one of our teams say before and after every single practice. And number 3 is I have no fear of losing or making mistakes. So we drill that into our athletes' minds over and over and over. In fact, one of our guys was an NCAA champ. And right after the match, they interviewed him. And it was one of the first things he said, I have no fear of losing or making mistakes. We had him so well mentally trained that he was like a robot when the NCAAs came. But in any event, we study history. Look at the greatest warriors, the Spartans, the samurai, the Aztecs, U.S. military, Navy SEALs, the Marines, all these guys. What do they have in common? They know what they believe and they're willing to die for it, right? They know what they believe and they're willing to die for it. So you look at wrestling, all right? You're not going to die out there, God willing, right? Very rare, the death in wrestling. But, the death feels like losing, right? So how do you overcome that fear of losing? You have to know what you believe. What are you about? So you never want to make wrestling your entire identity. Like we do pride ourselves in being wrestlers, on living for the challenge, on being warriors, on being competitors, but your life has to be bigger than that. Who are you? What are you about? What's your faith like? What's your relationship with God like? If you know that, and whatever happens to you, you could come back from it. But too many times wrestlers are saying to themselves, if I'm good, if I win, I'm great. If I lose, I'm a schmuck, right? We can't do that. And it's a common mistake we make from youth wrestling, and it carries us right up. It's great to want to win. It's great to hate to lose, but you can't make wrestling your identity. And if you watch guys like Kyle Snyder, you watch guys like Jordan Burroughs, listen to their interviews, they're more than just wrestlers. You have to listen to them. You look at teams like Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, listen to their interviews and those coaches. Yes, they're about winning, they're about success, but more than that, it's a philosophy, it's the lifestyle, it's who they are. And that's why they're going to be able to bounce back and succeed, even after a loss.
I want to dial it back to the business here a little bit and the growth that you guys have experienced. I know last year there was a certain podcast, one of the most popular podcasts out there, Joe Rogan, and Ben Askren is a guest. And right there, they're talking. Next thing you know, Ben Askren mentions Wrestling Mindset and the website right there on, one of the most downloaded podcasts in the universe. I mean, what did that do immediately for, 1, relevance, and 2, your business?
Yeah, I just drew a lot more attention, a lot more eyes onto what we were doing. It was great because Joe Rogan was talking about it, saying that there's many ways to physically train, but there's no exact way to train your mindset, like step by step. How are you supposed to think? And basically walked Ben Askren right into it. And Ben brought it up that we have mindset training. Right away, obviously you get a much bigger spike, more people signing up, people buying our products, our books, our master courses that we have, more people in the MMA world being familiar with mindset, and also just other sports in general, because I think what they realized, like Joe Rogan said, this could apply to anything, right? It doesn't matter if you have New Year's resolution, trying to lose weight, you're trying to build a business, you have a sales team that you want to be successful with. It doesn't matter. It's all mindset. Do you have confidence or not? Are you mentally tough or not? Can you bounce back from mistakes? Yes or no, right? So it definitely got a lot more attraction to the websites and to the different products and services that we have.
Yeah, and talk about the growth of the mindset coaches. How much of this is wrestling and combat sports? What other sports have you branched out to? Just talk about the general growth. We talked with Mike Moore at the NWCA convention in Fargo. You guys have a presence pretty much everywhere now, but there's manpower growth, there's business growth. There's so much stuff here. Is this kind of what you were envisioning when you and your brother started this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We were thinking big right from the very beginning, just because we see how important, how relevant it is to all sports, all athletes, and how much it's really not being addressed in a systematic way. That's the big thing. We're able to scale this thing in a systematic way. We now have over 75 mindset coaches around the country, all across the U.S. We spoke, obviously, at the National Wrestling Convention, the coaches convention for however many years, 7, 8 years now. This past year, we spoke at the Gymnastics Coaches Convention, national, lacrosse, Spoke with baseball, basketball, football. So really all around the country, we've expanded to all different sports. If you type in baseball mindset, lacrosse mindset, gymnast mindset, golf, tennis, we're going to pop up there on Instagram, on Facebook and everything. It's been great. It's been great. I mean, that's obviously wrestling is our baby. We started there, but there's a lot of wrestlers that have a brother or sister that plays hockey or tennis or golf. And we want to be able to help them too. It's great. I think everyone can benefit from the wrestler's mindset. So just taking that, branching it to the other sports, it's been great.
What's been the biggest eye-opening experience for you personally, going from your wrestling background and then maybe getting stumped by something that a team sport presents with you? I mean, or another individual sport, because tennis and gymnastics are it's a lot of practice. Not really a true team component to either of those sports. Like wrestling does have a team component, but anything throughout your journey in these last several years would be like, wow, I never considered that as an issue.
I would just say, like you said, it's just when we deal with a team sport, it's another dimension that's added to it. It's not just a matter, like when we talk about a wrestling, golf, tennis, gymnastics, it's easy to say, just focus on yourself, right? Do what's best for you. Get yourself ready. And usually if you're doing that, the team is going to follow suit. You're dealing with a sport like lacrosse, football, soccer, basketball. You can't not think about how the team is responding to things. There are times you are going to have to correct the teammate and make onboard corrections during the game. You're communicating during the game. So it's just another layer that's added to things. So, it's a little bit of a challenge right away for someone who's in an individual sport like us, right? But really what we did is we found other high-level athletes from all these different sports. We took the same exact curriculum from Wrestling Mindset and just modified the language and modified the situations to fit those sports. So we don't try to reinvent the wheel there. We take what we have, and we have an expert in those sports, make those worksheets and tailor them specifically to them. That makes some sense.
When you look back at your own career and your brother's career as you built this, and trial and error, and you're big, you got 75 mindset coaches now. You've got people from all walks of life. Of those 75, how many of them actually come from a wrestling background, and how many of them do you have to? I mean, the vetting process has got to be quite big, because it's a big world out there. There's a lot of people that like to flub their accomplishments and resume and pad the resume to try to get into a cushy gig or something like this. But how much of the vetting process and I guess the implementation of these coaches within the mindset training programs do you and your brother have to vet personally?
Well, we just brought in a great general manager, Jake Hunter. He was one of our teammates at the University of Pennsylvania. He's been involved in the company for years now. Just this past year, he left his job as a teacher to come in full time with Wrestling Mindset, and now he's the general manager. So he does all the hiring, all the vetting. He's just been an unbelievable asset to our team. So he's basically running the show with a lot of those back office and management situations. So it's been a big help. Like you said, there's a lot of people who want to be mindset coaches, a lot of people that want to be part of our sales team. A lot of people that want to help us move into different directions, take us into other sports, coming in as, regional directors or managers. So it takes time, just like anything else. It's got patience, making sure you're looking for the right things, people that really share the same values as us, people who really want to be mentors and set these kids up for success. And that's really what it comes down to, whether it's a team, whether it's a business, making sure you're working with people that share your values. They share your mission, and they share your vision of where the company should be moving.
What's the type of individual that you might come across and be like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks? I mean, there's certain type of people that should not be mindset coaches. What are some of those things that are kind of red flags, for hiring, not just the mindset red flag, but maybe a hiring red flag, maybe for this or any other business?
When it's all about success. Because it has to be bigger than that. It's got to be about how are we setting these kids up for life? So if all we're talking about is success or money or having a comfortable job, sometimes people will come on board and they'll say, well, I just want to have a job in wrestling. And we're like, this really isn't a job in wrestling. You're a mindset coach. You're a mentor. So, I mean, that's great. It's great you want to have a job within the sport of wrestling. But if that's all it's about, just like a comfort thing and just something to do as like a side job, even if our people we do have mostly part-time people. We've about 5-6 people that are full-time, and then everyone else is part-time. But those people who are part-time, just like our full-time people, it's a vocation for them, right? It's not just a job. It's not just a part-time job. It's a vocation. It means it's something they're doing to have a positive impact on the world, to glorify God. That's what we're really looking for. We're aiming in that direction.
How much of the messages change from year to year because the sport changes, technology changes? 10 years ago, Instagram wasn't a thing. 15 years ago, we weren't having tons of kids playing World of Warcraft. 20 years ago, I was still struggling with dial-up internet in my dorm room. So, I mean, what technological and societal changes do you have to go through, and how much does that tweak where the mindset training changes? Okay, this was a thing now, but now we're moving towards something, and the kids are starting to think a different way because their access to information or their access to technology has changed basically the path that they were going.
Yeah, so we're always evolving. We're always constantly, we're updating the worksheets, making little tweaks here and there, adding this example, adding that, modifying this part of the curriculum, taking that out. But overall, I would say these are evergreen topics, right? Like confidence, mental toughness, relaxing under pressure. For any sport, any profession, or really any time period in history, it's going to basically be the same. It's just now maybe we're talking more about, the distractions of Netflix versus maybe, people who they don't have access to technology. Maybe they're just hanging out on the street corner and doing whatever. So, I mean, yes, we're always using that. We have to be very aware of what forms of social media are these kids on? What are they looking at? What's in their visual and auditory, what's coming into their mind? How are the parents? Again, now we see a lot more overbearing parents than ever before in history. So you're constantly thinking about that. And then also you're seeing more structure. Right now, the kids also live a much more structured life in terms of you have to travel to go everywhere. There's always certain dates and times, whereas maybe back when we were competing, when we were younger, it wasn't like that as much. There's more, if you want to call it recreation or free time. Not everyone had a strength coach or had to go to all these. Now it seems like there's a national tournament almost every week. So we're thinking about all those kind of things. And we build that in a little bit, but I would say the topics themselves, they don't change.
Was there a phone call or an email or direct message or something from somebody that as soon as you got it was like, oh, wow, we have arrived?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that because I never think we arrived. Our intention was always to grow this and to make this very big and help as many people as possible. I think once you think you have all the answers, you got to start changing your questions, right? You aim high in wrestling, you aim high in school, you aim high in business. There's always like little small victories and small defeats, just like your wrestling career. So business becomes a lot like how it was wrestling. And you celebrate those little victories. And victories don't necessarily come in the form of getting your hand raised like in wrestling. Sometimes it's just, okay, we're deciding between two things, two directions. We picked a direction. Just sometimes making a decision is something to celebrate. That becomes a victory in and of itself because it's related to something within our control. Anytime our effort, our attitude, our aggressiveness is on point, you want to celebrate that. But there's, of course, there's little things here and there. You get mentioned on the Joe Rogan podcast. Great. You see different celebrities that are either retweeting our information or they like something you post on Instagram. Of course, that's a nice little feeling. We're human too. We like to see that. But I think the key is not to get too wrapped up in it. You feel good about it, and then you move forward. And the same thing with a defeat. There are different times where, you mess up, you make a mistake, things don't work out well for you, learn the lesson, move forward.
And you can see all of that type of stuff on the testimonials. You've got just a number of them from various, you got youth kids, you got women's wrestlers, you got NCAA champions, you got college national champion coaches. I mean, you've got just the gamut of wrestling styles. But I'm curious on U.S. women's national team coach Terry Steiner. He's sitting there on the testimonial page, and it's just like, I want to know, how does that discussion to get to work with a U.S. national team and its coach? These are the women who are going to represent the country, not just the World Championships, but the Olympic Championships. Talk about how that opportunity presented itself.
Yep, Terry Steiner, Matt Lindland for the U.S. women's team, the Greco team. started working with them. You see a lot of people at different events. You start forming relationships. And not only Terry Steiner, his brother Troy, we worked with his team. The team was on board the Mindset program. A lot of it, just like wrestling, you go up to people, you build relationships, you talk, and you come up with different ways to help. So it's a lot of brainstorming and a lot of being aggressive on our part in business. You have to approach people, you have to build relationships, and it's more fun that way. But yeah, we probably met both of them years ago. I think we met Matt Lindland originally at a UFC gym on Long Island, I believe. And that's back when my brother and I, we started a fitness business originally. That's why we have the Z in our name. Our fitness business was Z Fanatical Fitness. And that's why probably a lot of coaches are confused around the country when they get an invoice from Z Fanatical Life, because we changed the name, but we still have that Z there in the logo. But yeah, we met Matt years ago, and I think back when he was still fighting.
Yeah, and back when I was with Amateur Wrestling News in the Open Mat, you were writing blogs for us before, the Wrestling Mindset. It was right around the time Wrestling Mindset kind of took hold. It was like Z Fanatical Fit. Wait, what's this Wrestling Mindset thing now? So, yeah, kind of seeing the evolution from start to finish here.
Yes. Yeah, it was interesting. So we learned a lot about that in our business. We originally wanted to do like a P90X and Insanity marketing scheme for fitness. Me, my brother Jeff, my brother Greg. It's going to be like the three brothers presenting the three levels of fitness: exercise, nutrition, and mindset. So mindset was there also. And eventually we got to deal with one of the gyms in the New Jersey area, Retro Fitness. And it was going well, but we just had minimal control because we were confined by what we could do in their gym. So all the while, I still had clients for mindset, for wrestling and teams. And we just decided to take it in that direction. And, thanks be to God, it's been an incredible success. So it's just much more in line with who we are and what we want to do.
Do you ever think that the whole process is just kind of unbelievable when you be like, wait a minute, I got, let's use the Steiner brothers as an example. So wait a minute, I got Troy and Terry Steiner bringing my company in to do things. Like, these guys know a lot more about wrestling than I do. What can I possibly offer them? Wait a minute, what? I mean, that's the one thing that, like, when somebody calls you for something, like, why? What? Wait, you're asking me? I mean, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome, or, I mean, how much was it to kind of fight through that initial thoughts, be like, okay, they're hiring me for a reason?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, but it's just a different way of really looking at it. That if you're looking at it from a wrestling perspective, that's why you have to be looking at the big picture. And that's why, again, it's important to have a mindset coach to actually show you how to look at this. So this is how I would approach that from a mental situation. We're dealing with an Olympic coach. Obviously, we're not going to teach them anything about wrestling. They've been involved in the game a lot longer. They've had all the success. They've won tournaments and competitions and coached people to win tournaments and competitions that I've never even competed in. That's okay. We're not there to teach these coaches wrestling. We're there to teach them mindset. So we're not stepping on any kind of toes. They have their expertise, the sport. Our expertise is mindset. Just like it's nothing personal with us. We don't know the sport the way they do. It's nothing personal. They don't know mindset the way we do because we've been trained for it. I have my 2 master's degrees in psychology. Basically studied it my whole life. A coach could only do so much. A coach is a mini CEO. They got to know technique. They got to know about fundraising, recruiting. They got to be an administrator. There's a lot on a coach's hands. So it would be the same reason why they bring in a strength coach. The strength coach isn't going to teach the wrestling coach much about wrestling, probably nothing at all. But the strength coach is an expert on building muscle or building explosive power or building conditioning. So we have our little niche ourselves. Mindset is something that we could contribute to them, that they might know pieces of it, and it might be something they do naturally, but it might not be something that they're trained in how to communicate. And that's what we do. We know the lessons, and we know how to communicate those lessons effectively to the kids. So it's on the surface you think, man, what are these guys doing using me? But that's just the wrong way of thinking of it.
And the other part that I'm also looking at is, like, you've got a guy who, for example, these coaches, national champions. It's like, okay, we're hiring a mindset coach to help our kids build to become national championships or hit their goals. Whether if their goals to be an All-American, hit that. If their goals to be a national champion, hit that. But you've got coaches that have won national championships. That's one of those things. Like, they've got the experience to teach here. There's that gap, between what you've done as an athlete and what they've done as an athlete. Whereas they don't have the mindset training, you have the mindset training. How do you work together with the coach that has that experience that these kids want to get? and then build it into what you're teaching?
Yes, I mean, every coach is going to have a different background, and I think that brings something unique to the table. Like, so first thing we have a parent do, or we have a coach do, is they fill out a parent questionnaire, coach's questionnaire, and we use that information to match their kid or their team up with a coach that's going to best fit them. So if we have a kid, all they really care about is they have this one big goal, they want to be a national champ or whatever, we might give them a coach who's done that already. Right now, there's many other reasons why kids would do mindset training outside of just being successful in wrestling. We had another kid, highly successful wrestler. One of his big goals was to own a gym in life. So we matched him up. We saw that on the parent questionnaire. We matched him up with the mindset coach who actually owns a gym. Another kid really wanted to be an Ivy League student. So we matched him up with one of our Ivy League mindset coaches. So it's great to have the diversity of what the mindset coaches have achieved in their lives, and also what are some of their other specialties that could directly help the kid. We have several other mindset coaches that have had some serious injuries in their career that they were able to recover from. So if we know a kid's dealing with a serious injury, we're going to match them up with that mindset coach. So it's not like the national champ is always the best fit for everyone, but it helps because there are some people that's exactly what they need. Did I answer that question?
I think you nailed that one pretty good. So again, talking with Gene Zannetti, one of the founders of Wrestling Mindset, which again began as Z Fanatical Fitness, on the web at wrestlingmindset.com. A lot of inspirational stuff that floats around on social media. And how much in the time we got left, the social media impact of your company. I mean, you talked about some of the people that share some of these quotes or retweet or favorite or repost, whichever app they're using on Instagram. I mean, what's been the biggest benefit of social media in a business like yours?
We just wouldn't have been able to grow this to the same extent if we didn't have social media. I mean, I guess if we could have, if we had some kind of infomercial campaign, but within sports, that's incredibly rare. So
and you also need to get those people that look dumbfounded in the audience that are just nodding their head and like, or like these, like, are you tired of washing big bulky pants? Wah, wah. Try Wrestling Mindset. I don't know if that's going to work. They always find the most inept people at washing dishes for those things. Maybe they need mindset training on how to wash dishes. Anyway, we're getting off the rails on that one here. Wah, wah. All right, Gene, the time we got left, where can they follow you guys on social media? Because there's a lot of inspirational stuff out there we want to throw at them. Of course, the website, wrestlingmindset.com, and then the social avenues are, fill in the blank.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn. We're on all of them. And then if for any of our listeners that have athletes, kids that play other sports, or whatever it is, lacrosse, football, baseball, we have it. You check out zwinningmindset.com. So zwinningmindset.com. And then I'm sure we probably have their sport on our Instagram, on our Facebook. Again, lacrosse, football, tennis, golf, soccer, any of that stuff. We have all those specific pages all built out. So they can take a look at it. They're getting the same great information.
And you go to the website, you can see the mindset red flags: not pulling the trigger, not being aggressive, no killer instinct, choking in big matches, you're a slow starter, the different wrestler in practice of the match, giving your opponents too much respect. Get that free session, again, wrestlingmindset.com. Gene, it's been too long, man. Next time we'll make it a lot shorter, between 2 years between episodes here on World Wrestling Resource.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot for having me, Jason.
Subscribe to the World Wrestling Resource podcast by going to WWRpodcast.com and check it out on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, or wherever you find your podcasts. World Wrestling Resource at worldwrestlingresource.com.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.